we have Josh Scharf, and Josh and I really didn't talk about how you wanted to be introduced before the show, so I'm just going to wing it here. Josh is a client of ours. He's been a client of Gearhart Law since like 2007. And it's amazing that we've managed to maintain a relationship for that long.
We have open communication.
Considering our mutual personalities.
Well, I'm not going to say anything here.
But Josh has been making consumer products forever and sourcing them out of China. And so, of course, we're all wondering what's going on with the coronavirus and why are our products covered in germs?
Well, Richard, that's a wonderful question. I've been manufacturing in Asia in general for well over 30 years, and not only for my products, but also for clients' products, mostly Fortune 100s. So I'm kind of a bit of an expert in terms of how to produce, where to produce, and what the issues are. What we're facing here is really the perfect storm in China. Under normal conditions, every year there is Chinese New Year. Typically, the factories start closing down in mid-late January. They come back in mid-late February, and they start up again. This particular year, because of the slowdown in orders from North America, factories started closing down earlier, like at the end of December. Now, what that means is that their workers who usually live at the factory, and it's not as bad as it sounds. They live in dormitories on the factory grounds, go back to the provinces from wherever they came from, all over China. If you've ever been to China during Chinese or before Chinese New Year, it's a horrifying vision because everything is traveling. People are traveling by plane, by car, by bus, by bicycle, by mule pack, any which way to get back to the provinces for Chinese New Year. They stay there for a few weeks, and then they head back to the factories. This year, because of Chinese New Year, everybody's back home to diverse provinces, and then this coronavirus thing started hitting, which meant that people were not traveling back. Now, the factories are usually in 5 or 6 eastern provinces in China, and depending on what you're manufacturing, different provinces. Without workers, they can't do anything. So they're not coming back and there's always some loss, even on good years. They'll always have a certain percentage of employees that don't come back. But this particular year, it's a real issue.
And so the factories are at a standstill?
Not completely. They usually have our factories. We produce a number of products in factories in China. Their percentage, one factory is about 40% staffed, somebody else is about 65%, or so they tell me, and who the hell really knows the truth here. But the other problem is that you have to know your product. Now, most products, certainly if they have electronics in them or certain components, everything is not manufactured under one roof in one factory. The factories that we make contract with will finish a product, maybe do injection molding, assemble it, pack it out, and ship it. But a product might have multiple parts from different factories. So then we have to be concerned if the battery factory, if the PCB, the printed circuit board factory is producing, if you pack it in cartons, if the carton factory is producing, if the little printed bags that you put the product in or the printed instructions, if they're up and running. So without those component parts, you're stuck. Now, the component part manufacturers also provide components to factories all over the world. So automobile factories in the United States and Mexico, if they're not getting their wiring harnesses from the Chinese factory, they're stuck. So you can understand the rolling effect of having this problem. Now, we've diversified, and we're opening up a factory or two in other countries. But
That's for your products, right?
for a couple of my products.
Right.
But, and I'm always being approached by old clients, new clients, asking for advice as to what to do. But the real issue is that even with factories in third countries, you still have to get the subcomponents from China because there's nobody else who's manufacturing them.
Wow, that's a really interesting twist. And the scale of the problem is huge. You can understand why the market has been so choppy lately with respect to the virus, because manufacturing could have take a real hit here, right? And it could have a real impact on the economy.
Well, it is already having impact, but the potential is greater. Now, retailers not having product on shelves, automobile manufacturers, it affects really every industry that deals with any kind of manufacturing in China. We're now finding out that pharmaceuticals, drugs, are being manufactured in, of all places, Hubei province, where Wuhan is. And,
Gracious.
Is that lovely?
So your drugs are covered with germs too.
Hopefully that same drug cures you of whatever germs they're sending. So, and it's becoming, it hasn't really hit crisis point, but I think a lot of people are waking up here and saying, we have to take these industries back, which is not necessarily a bad thing. Now, there already was an issue even before coronavirus with the tariffs and the trade war. And I know that with some of our products, where we would normally pay 1.3% tariff, we're getting hit with 15% tariff for things coming out of China. So there's an incentive to take it to other countries and manufacture in other factories. But multiply that out, and you can see how big of a problem this is.
When I was at the toy fair last week, of course, everybody is shipping from China. Of course, everybody was talking about the virus, and the manufacturers that are usually just all over the vendors, they come every year. They're trying to get more toys. Nobody showed up. It was just like manufacturer wasteland, and and of course now is the time when all the toy makers are taking orders for the holiday season, right? This is when they're setting up and they're deciding what products they're going to do, and there's no manufacturing.
There is no manufacturing, and part of the problem is that they can't get out of China. There are no flights out of China. So
oh, that's right. Yeah.
There are no flights out of China. There's no flights into China. I was going to miss your program because I was supposed to be in China. I don't know how to tell you this, but I usually go to China.
What?
I know, it's horrendous, and I need to be more connected. Like I said.
Just stay in the present, okay?
The present is I'm here in New York City, but I was supposed to go. I had to cancel my flights about my trip 3.5 weeks ago. I usually, after Chinese New Year, after the workers get back to the factories, I'm usually there. I usually look for new factories. I'm developing new products, as you know. And you want to meet with the factories, with the factory engineers in terms of production. And nothing this year.
So, Josh, since you're kind of in the heart of it, probably, I don't know if you're any more enlightened than any of the rest of us, but have you...
I think I am, Liz. But,
I hope so.
I'm in the present.
Love that. So, is anybody willing to even take a guess about how long this is going to last?
If I had a crystal ball, Liz, I could probably tell you, but They're not crystal. So the
This is a
the
family.
I think it's really anybody's guess. I know a lot of marketers, a lot of manufacturers, like example Apple, has gone into the manufacturing business recently. Now, for just an iPhone has 200 different parts to it, from 40 to 43 different countries that all converge at the assembly factory in China. So the key is really, for any kind of manufacturers, I don't know when the coronavirus is going to end, but what I do know is that if you're manufacturing or developing a product, you better know what goes into your product. You better know how to manufacture your product. It's no longer just a widget. You have to know every single component and have a deep understanding of that.
So how fast can products be switched from one factory to another? How quickly could Apple move their their manufacturing facilities?
Well, I think with Apple, what they've been working with their component manufacturers all along, but they haven't taken over the manufacturing. So they might just be changing seats at the factories. But I could tell you for other manufacturers, if they're looking to move their manufacturing to a third country or fourth country, wherever, they have to be realistic in terms of timeline. And it won't happen tomorrow. And you have to take a look in terms of anticipated volumes, what you hope to produce, how the factory is going to be producing them, when they're going to ship them.
So it's not just something that can happen overnight. It's really it's really a process to plan the manufacturing. And could somebody like Apple just pay more for workers and get more, or are these jobs specialized and trainings involved? I guess it depends on the job, right?
It depends on the job. Manufacturing has everything to do with having a worker repeat exactly the same thing over and over again. So it's not high level skill. It's just one guy is going to solder at this point and then move it down the line. That's what mass production is. So it's not a high skill thing. It's just you need a volume of people depending on what you're selling, what you're manufacturing. Understand that at a certain point we had much higher manufacturing capabilities in the United States in the early 90s. And a lot of the marketers moved down to Mexico, to Juarez, with the understanding that it was going to be less costly, and they'll be able to produce the same quality of product, and they could leave the damn unions behind. That was the incentive, that and produce it in North America. And with NAFTA, there was an advantage. Within a year or two, the higher level, there was a time when we used to manufacture TVs and radios and all kinds of electronics here in the United States. You can almost hear the sucking sound going down to Mexico. And when they realized they couldn't manufacture down there, they went to China. I was in China when that happened, and the Chinese thought it was like manna from heaven came down. It was like the best thing since chop suey for them. It was just unbelievable. But they took it on, and they had enough mass. There was enough investment from the government. Now, to the point about more workers going to the factory, actually, from what I understand, the PRC, People's Republic of China, is actually incentivizing workers, giving them bonuses, helping them travel to the factory, because it's to China's interest to get manufacturing back up, or else if it just keeps this way,
they're going to lose a lot of business, right?
They are already.
Yeah.
They have been already. And cut and sew operation, which is very low tech, sewing, sneakers, things like that. That's been bleeding out of China for quite some time, because you don't need a lot of technology. You need fabric, which unfortunately comes from China. You need sewing machines. You need relatively low skills in production.
Somebody was telling me at the toy fair about how they could manufacture everything needed for their toy someplace other than China, except for the box. The box was something that they had to have made in China. It was just a cardboard box with a label that was put over it. And so when you put the label over the sides of the box, that's what made the box. You had this cut out and you put this label on. In order for them to buy a machine to do that automatically would be $20 million. And so for their small operation, it was completely impractical to automate it. But for the number of units that they were selling, they were buying these boxes from China, and somebody sits there and puts the label on the cutout, and they make the box. And that's the only economic way that they can get them. And it just kind of amazed me, sort of the logic in that it's cheaper to have somebody sitting there putting a label on cardboard to make a box than have it automated.
Yeah, but then they have to deal with issues about quality control, quality assurance. The box, a handmade box, is never going to be the same as a manufactured box. What they're dealing with is the printing presses, the large volume printer presses, the die cutting, the folding machines, which are costly. I don't know about 20 million, but they are costly. And if you don't have all that, you might have heard the phrase supply chain. This is what we're talking about. Supply chain, the ability to have all these sub-factories produce the component that you need to complete the product.
This has been awesome, Josh. Thank you. I just kind of feel like we have to live our lives, and I'm still going to buy stuff. I can't help myself. So.
Sure. Well, maybe at the end of the day, it'll be good for the United States, at least maybe more jobs here. But I guess we just have to see how it all works out, right?
We do, and hopefully deal with the theft of IP.
Right.
And all the problems that, as you know, my business has been plagued with as well.
Sure.
So, and frankly, if anybody wants to get a hold of me, would that make sense?
Yes.
That probably the best way to reach me is through my email address, which would be josh@archetypeltd.com. ARCHETYPELTD.com. Thank you.
Yeah, can I tell one joke before we go?
Why not?
So I was on LinkedIn and my friend posted this picture of them actually washing the subway cars. And somebody posted a comment. Yeah.
They're keeping it de-germatizing the subway in New York
City?
to save us from the coronavirus. Yeah.
Somebody made a comment that those coronavirus germs don't stand a chance next to New York City subway germs. Well, like I said, it kind of funnier, but I thought the sentiment was good. So anyway.
Well, you're listening to Passage to Profit with Richard and Elizabeth Gearhart. Our special guest this evening, Josh Scharf, who explained to us all of the manufacturing challenges in China. Thank you very much for joining us this evening. And we'll be right back after this commercial break.